On 18th of June 1429, north of Orléans, an English army moves along a narrow road toward the small town of Patai. On paper, this is supposed to be just another planned fighting retreat. Experienced commanders, battle-hardened longbowmen, the usual defensive routine. By evening, the English expect at most a brief clash with some angry Frenchmen. Instead, by sunset, the road turns into a long slaughterhouse. Hundreds of men in green and red jackets lie face down in the dust. Bows snapped, commanders in chains. This day does not just destroy an English field army in the heart of France. It shatters the myth that the longbow makes the English unbeatable in open battle. Imagine you are an English longbowman. For 10 or 15 years, you live with one simple truth. If you have time to drive in your stakes, you are almost immortal. At Crécy, Poitiers, Agincourt, French knights die dozens of meters before they reach your line. Again and again you see the same scene. Heavy horses bog down and fall, men in iron choke in the mud, and you stand knee-deep in spent arrows. Today at Patay it looks the same. The order to take position, stakes hammered into the ground, bowstrings pulled tight. There is only one difference. This time, the hunter doesn't notice how he turns into the prey. This battle is often called the anti-Agincourt. There, French cavalry slams into a wall of stakes and arrows and folds like wet cardboard. Here, everything is reversed. The English longbowmen are caught at the exact moment when their broken weapon isn't loaded yet. The French don't walk into prepared killing zones. They hit before the English machine can spin up. The main thesis of this story is simple and painful. The same tactic that looks like a permanent cheat code can, on the wrong day and in the wrong place, become a trap for those who believe in it too much. To understand the scale of the disaster at Patai, you have to pull the camera back. We're in the final phase of the 100 Years' War, the so-called Lancastrian period. England controls northern France, seats its king in Paris, and leans on an alliance with Burgundy. The French crown is split. The native nobility is not even sure their kingdom has a future at all. Not long ago, after Agincourt, France looked less like a state and more like a slowly dying patient on an English drip. Then a figure appears that breaks the script, Joan of Arc. Voices from heaven or not, the basic fact is simple. In the spring of 1429, the siege of Orléans collapses, the English camp burns, and an army that seemed like a professional execution squad suddenly retreats. After Orléans begins the Loire campaign, French forces under the Duke of Alençon and a whole bouquet of captains, Dunois, La Hire, Poton de Xaintrailles, methodically kick the English out of Jargeau, Meung, and Beaugency. Every day brings the French another lesson in how to win, and gives the English another dose of quiet panic. In the English camp, one god remains unshaken: the longbow. It's not just a weapon, it's a military religion. The standard recipe for the English killing farm looks like this. Find a convenient patch of ground, preferably muddy or in a narrow defile. Push several hundred archers forward. Force them to drive sharpened stakes into the earth so no knight can break into the tight formation. This trick has already smashed French attacks 3 times and given England its legendary aura. In the eyes of English commanders, the bow is the answer to everything. Cavalry, numbers, and midlife crisis in their faith in victory. But in June 1429, a crack appears in this religion. At Meung and Beaugency, the French army moves faster, bolder, and better coordinated than the English are used to seeing. At the English headquarters near Meung gather the survivors of Orléans and the Loire forts. John Talbot, aggressive, hot-blooded, used to solving problems by attacking, and John Fastolf, a more cautious veteran who senses that the days of easy victories are over. Talbot demands an immediate strike at the French. Fastolf doesn't want to risk a pitched battle against a numerically superior enemy. In the end, they choose a compromise, which is often worse than any radical decision. Retreat, hoping to avoid a major battle, but keep the slow, heavy marching formation. The French, on the contrary, no longer think in defensive terms. After their string of victories along the Loire, they have a new OP combo: mobile heavy cavalry plus aggressive scouting. They understand, if the English get time, they will once again turn any field into a shooting gallery. So the task is simple and devilishly hard. Catch them while they are still on the move, while the stakes are on the wagons, not in the ground. Joan, according to contemporary sources, insists that the enemy must be finished immediately, while God and luck are clearly on their side. Even if she is not literally riding in the vanguard, her fanatical certainty becomes fuel for the knights and men-at-arms. Morning of 18th of June. The English column, a mix of the men of Fastolf, Talbot and Scales, stretches along the road to the north. In front ride detachments of archers. Behind them march men-at-arms, baggage, mounted and foot soldiers. They are retreating, but not in panic. The plan is to pull back from Beaugency, link up with larger forces and buy time. The longbowman's role is clear. At the right moment they must turn, occupy good ground, and turn the French into yet another meme about French cavalry in the mud. The English are confident this is still their territory, a space where they dictate the script of the fight. The French command under Alençon moves faster than the English expect. Forward ride light, mobile mounted units, essentially a reconnaissance strike vanguard under La Hire and Poton de Xaintrailles. Their order is not just find the enemy, but find the moment of weakness. Local peasants, rumours, dust on the horizon, everything works for the French. The area around Patay is gently rolling country with small woods and fields, where a column is easy to spot from a ridge but hard to hide. For hunters, this is almost ideal terrain. The English command understands that the French pursuers are close. Following the old playbook, Talbot sends a detachment of longbowmen into a small wood alongside the road to set an ambush and slow the French cavalry. Then the plan changes. The archers are pulled off one position and shifted to another, where they are supposed to block the road with a dense wall of stakes and arrows. This is no calm preparation like at Agincourt, where the English simply stood and waited for customers. At Patai the archers work in a time crunch. They know the French vanguard is somewhere nearby and rush to prepare their killing ground before helmets appear over the ridge. Then chance intervenes in a way military historians love to retell. While the archers fuss with the stakes, a deer, or in later versions, a hare, runs across the field. For men exhausted by marching, this isn't just an animal, it's a free dinner and a welcome distraction. The archers let out the usual hunting cry, which in normal circumstances would dissolve into the background noise of the day. But now they are heard by people they can't see. French scouts. Several riders tense up. If they can hear English hunting cries, the enemy must be very close. The patrol swings toward the wood, and instead of peaceful prey finds half-finished English positions, where the stakes still stick out in clumps, rather than in a neat defensive fence. La Hire and Poton get the report. In front of them are English archers who haven't finished fortifying their ground. This is the moment French knights have been waiting for their entire lives. By all the manuals they should halt, wait for the main force, form up carefully, discuss the plan. But after Orléans, Jargeau and Meung, these men are used to a different logic. You see a chance, you slam into it. Around 180 knights and heavily armed horsemen of the vanguard form a line of attack. Nobody wants to be late to this feast. Hitting the longbowmen head-on before they are ready is like catching an archer with the string in his hands, not on the bow. The first strike does not look like a classic knightly charge under drums, but like a sudden lunge of a pack of predators. Horses driven to full speed burst into a zone where there are too few archers and too few stakes, scattered and crooked. Some longbowmen grab their bows, trying to loose at least one volley, but the distance is too short. The tight formation of heavy cavalry tears their line into pieces. Men in leather armor and gambesons fall under the hooves. Bowstrings snap. Arrows fly uselessly into the sky. Compared to the long, grinding English battles of attrition, this is the opposite. Everything is decided in minutes. The English units in the rear hear the roar of the charge and the screams, but see only clouds of dust and the backs of their own men running. Ahead, instead of the usual calm line of archers behind stakes, there is chaos. The cavalry assault of the vanguard blows up Talbot's carefully staged script. The ambush turns into a hole in the formation. Fastolf, according to accounts, tries to rally his men, but he sees the lead horsemen abandoning their positions and fleeing. Psychology does what swords don't have time to do. When the front ranks turn and run, it becomes very hard for anyone behind to stay brave, professional soldiers. Meanwhile, the French vanguard doesn't stop after its first success. While Lahire and Xaintrailles are finishing off the archers, the rest of their cavalry, about 100-300 heavily armed horsemen, rides up onto the ridge and sees the stretched-out English column. It's a perfect target. Cut-off segments, wide exposed flanks, almost no prepared defensive lines. The French riders wheel around for a second wave, this time not against scattered bowmen, but against the main body. One unit after another slams into the English from the side and rear, turning an organized retreat into a chain of isolated pockets of resistance and panicked flight. What many chroniclers later call the Battle of Patay is, in essence, closer to a hunt for humans. Longbowmen, who are used to killing from a distance and under the shield of stakes, are forced to fight hand-to-hand against men in full armor. Some try to slip away into nearby woods, abandoning their bows. Some drop to their knees and surrender. Others simply don't have time to be taken prisoner. Overheated knights cut down anything that moves, venting years of rage at those same peasants with sticks who had so many times turned them into chopped meat. French losses are minimal. Some sources talk about just a few dead and roughly 100 wounded. More cautious estimates mention up to 100 killed. Compared to the thousands of English, this is statistical noise. And there are personal tragedies. John Talbot, one of the main English commanders in France, finds himself surrounded and captured. By the rules of the game, he is treated as a precious asset. Someone will pay serious ransom for a man like this. There is no profit in killing him. Chronicles name the knight Jean d'Aulon, often Jean d'O or Daniel-like forms in translation, as the one who takes Talbot, earning nobility or royal favor for it. John Fastolf, in contrast, claws his way out of the disaster with his life and part of his men, but loses the one thing he can't buy back, his honor. After the campaign, he is accused of cowardice and fleeing the field. He spends years defending himself, and although he is officially cleared, the stain remains. Centuries later, the comic cowardly knight Falstaff in English culture will partially grow out of this scandal. As always with the Middle Ages, the numbers aren't simple. French sources love to stress that they supposedly lose only 3 men killed and about 100 wounded, while the English suffer between 2,500 and 4,000 dead and captured. Modern historians are more cautious. They suggest perhaps around 250 English killed and hundreds, possibly thousands, taken prisoner, especially among the longbowmen. But whatever exact figures you pick, the scale is clear. For the English, it is a catastrophe. For the French, almost a risk-free execution. The field after the fighting is strewn with hundreds of bows, broken stakes, dead and wounded with nobody to help them. Within a day or two, the local peasants will arrive to strip armor and finish off those unlucky enough to still be breathing. Strategically, Patai is not just another victory of Joan. It is the destruction of the main English field army in central France. Before this, the English had a network of garrisons supported by mobile veteran detachments who could ride out and stabilize any local crisis. At Patai, those mobile reserves turn into blood on the road. Many experienced officers are either in chains or lying in ditches. In the following weeks, there is almost nobody left to offer serious resistance across a huge swath of territory, and the French, wasting no time, start sowing the shroud for English power. The road to Reims opens largely here, in this one-sided massacre. After Patai, the French army marches through towns with little real fighting. Garrisons, seeing that the invincible English field force has vanished, are far more willing to surrender or march out under terms. A month later, On 17th of July 1429, the Dauphin Charles is crowned in Reims as King Charles VII of France. Joan stands by the royal banner, and for her supporters everything is obvious. Orléans, the Loire campaign, Patai, the coronation, it's a chain of miracles. For hard-nosed military men, the slaughter at Patai is also an example of how aggressive tactics and good reconnaissance can redraw the map of a war in a few hours. Over time, a whole mythology grows up around Patai. In the French 19th century narrative, it becomes almost revenge for Agincourt. There, French nobles fell in the mud under English arrows. Here, English archers die under French hooves. Patai is often credited personally to Joan, although contemporary sources are fairly clear. The decisive move is made by the cavalry vanguard, not by the maid herself, who stays with the main body. Historians argue about the numbers, about the exact shape of the battlefield, about how real or embellished the deer episode is. But almost nobody disputes the core point. This is the day when the shine of the English longbow noticeably dims. Tactically, Patai delivers a blunt but important lesson. Any broken weapon in war only works as long as the enemy agrees to play by its rules. The English longbow is terrifying when it has time and terrain, when knights dutifully charge into stakes through sticky mud. As soon as the French stop accepting this script and start pressing with speed, scouting, and surprise, the beloved wonder weapon turns into a bundle of sticks and strings that only get in the way when you try to run. Here dies the belief that one technology by itself can guarantee victory. In a more philosophical sense, the Battle of Patay shows how fragile empires are when they're built on one lucky trick. The English come to France as masters of the longbow and defensive hedgehog formations, and for decades that works. But on a hot June day in 1429, everything falls apart because of a chain of very human things. Fatigue, haste, a hunting cry, a few bold decisions by French captains. Not God, not fate, not the literal magic of Joan knocks down the English army. It's their own refusal to learn and adapt. Sometimes a century of invincible reputation doesn't end in a grand, balanced showdown, but in a place where a longbowman drops his stakes to look at a deer and never makes it back to his wall of wood.